Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, councillors, and welcome to members of the public listening in. I am Councillor Mark Corey, chair of this panel, and I will go through the relevant housekeeping before we begin. There are no practice evacuations planned for this evening, but if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the town hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street or to St Runwald Street, wherever is most appropriate. This meeting is being broadcast live over the internet on the Council's YouTube channel and will also be available to view afterwards. Discreet use of mobile phones and other devices is welcomed, but you are requested to set them to silent and to not use voice or camera flash functions. We may have a break at 7:30, subject to the progress of business. So as I said, I'm Councillor Mark Corey. I represent Wivenhoe Ward and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. I'll pass to my right and ask officers and councillors to introduce themselves now, please.
Pam Donnelly, Strategic Director, standing in for Richard Block.
Good evening, Tina Bourne, Labour, Greenstead Ward.
Councillor Sam McCarthy, representing Shrub End Ward.
Councillor Lorcan Whitehead, representing Newtown and Christchurch Ward.
Councillor Lavenham from Tiptree Ward.
Councillor Barbara Wood, Tiptree Ward.
Dennis Willits, Lexton Braeswick Ward.
Nigel Chapman, Councillor for Rural North Ward.
Owen Howell, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you all. Item 2 is substitutions, and we have Councillor Sam McCarthy substituting for Councillor Lynn Barton, so that's a straight Shrub End swap. Thank you. Hard to say. Urgent items, we have none. Declarations of interest. Are there any on this item, on this agenda, on these items this evening? No, I see no immediate declarations. Moving on then to the minutes of the 14th of December. Can I move that those be approved? And if not, if there's any inaccuracies, let us know now. So can we move to approve them? Agreed, thank you. Item 6, general have your say. We have no general have your say, but Owen, I believe we do have a councillor speaking or a submission later.
Yep, that's right, Mr. Chairman, on items 10 and 11.
Oh, yeah, excellent, thank you. Item 7, decisions taken under special urgency provisions. There are none. Item 8, cabinet or portfolio holder decisions called in for review. There are none. Item 9, items requested by members of the panel and other members. There are none. Item 10 is one of our main items coming forward. So we have the portfolio holder briefing from Councillor Beverley Oxford for the communities portfolio. So I'll be happy to invite Bev to come forward, please. But we do have Councillor Martin Warnes to speak, and he is unmuted already and ready to go. So Martin, I'll invite you forward, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I'll take my opportunity to be able to speak now. Okay, just bear with me. Right. Sorry, I had something set up to read and I'm struggling to find it. So I will resist the temptation to talk about Peppa Pig, and I will go straight for my paper version in the light that I've got. No, I have found my prompter. Okay. I wish to raise concerns about the graffiti removal service, which falls under Beverley's portfolio. Beerchurch has suffered, no doubt like others, from graffiti tags adorning street furniture. Indeed, I raised the issue at a cabinet meeting and you agreed with me, Beverley, that tags, squiggles as you term them, should not be tolerated. 5 different tags have plagued street furniture in Beerchurch for some time. One tag has reappeared with vengeance, this being ERKS. The problem is that whilst we keep cleaning tags off street furniture, it reappears, and given how long the tag ERKS has plagued the ward, it's enforcement action that is now needed, and that's where the problems really exist. At the end of last year, I sought reassurance that tags are being recorded for enforcement purposes so the police can be asked to act. I was informed that tags are not being recorded because it was a drain on resources. The justification for not recording the tags was that reporting incidents via the police 101 phone line takes an average of 15 minutes and was not a feasible use of limited resources. Yet, if we don't report it, then the police will not commit their resources to resolving it. It's a vicious circle. While I was asking middle management for confirmation that graffiti tags are being recorded for enforcement purposes, I received assurances from senior management that a detailed record of graffiti, its location, the tag, etc. is being made, and that this information and data is used when working with our colleagues at Essex Police. When I asked at directorate level for a breakdown of what fixed penalty notices had been issued in 2021, I was advised that none had been issued for graffiti in the current financial year. Well, is it any wonder that we are not able to deter tag artists if we are not even recording details of the graffiti that does occur? If we can't get our own house in order, is it not an open invitation to every graffitiist in the borough to daub their squiggles wherever they want with impunity? I have been assured that the resource issues preventing officer time being used to record the offending tags with the police has been raised further up the managerial chain, yet clearly the message is not being heard. And that's why I'm here tonight, raising these issues with you, Beverly, the portfolio holder responsible for this fine mess. My question to you is therefore a very simple one. When are you going to get a grip? The current situation is simply not good enough. It's using up resources without deterring those responsible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Warnes. I think we got most of that. So, Bev, I'll invite you forward. If you are able to answer that question first, that would be very helpful. And then, as planned, we'll allow you to have 5 minutes to present on your portfolio, and we will then ask questions as a panel after that. So, if you could address Councillor Warnes' issues first, and then we'll come back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, panel. I'm going to have to take this up, Councillor Warnes, because I have always been told that these tags, they were, and it's the police that were doing it, were keeping an eye on these tags so that then they could find out who was doing it. As you're now telling me they're not recorded, I am going to have to find out why, because I'm ever so sorry, I did not know that. And if they're telling me they're being recorded and then they're telling you they're not being recorded, something is going wrong. So would you leave it with me, and I promise I will find out exactly what is what and why it's not being done. And if it's not being done, why not? And when are they going to start doing it? And I do apologise that I can't answer your question in full.
Thank you, Bev. I suggest, Councillor Warnes, that you do directly give Bev some of that detail that you've put tonight in your submission. I'll come to you for just a response, short response.
That's fine, Chair. He will email the details over to Beverly.
Thank you, Councillor Warnes. Okay, Bev, over to you. And if you'd like to just outline briefly what you've been up to in your portfolio. We've allowed about 5 minutes for each portfolio holder. You don't have to take up the 5 minutes, but over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, good evening, Scrutiny Panel. My portfolio is rather large, so what I'll do is I'll give you a whistle-stop tour of things that have been happening. And I thought I would start with some achievements. We have again been awarded the Green Flag. We have 3 awards for Castle Park, Highwoods Country Park, and the Cemetery and Crematorium. These awards, they show how well we have been maintaining our parks and open spaces, and that they've been maintained to the highest environmental standards, as well as excellent visitor facilities and being beautifully maintained. The areas are checked throughout the year to make sure that these standards are kept to. The Highwoods Visitor Centre has had 25k capital funds and a top-up of £3,000 Section 106. This has enabled the Visitor Centre to become compliant. They've had new automatic doors, which I'm so grateful for, because I was so afraid that Gerard was going to smash the doors down at some point. And they also have new counters so disabled people can get nearer, and also a nice new drinks machine so they can make nice cafe lattes and coffees and things. Our greening policy, glyphosates will not any longer be used on council land, and they're going to be ceased on CBH land in the next grass cutting season. The only exceptions are the Japanese knotweed and giant hogweed. To get rid of these, the glyphosates is actually injected right into the plant, which I found a bit gruesome. To encourage biodiversity, the cutting regime has been changed to once every 3 weeks to once mid-autumn at the end of the growing season, and 10 areas of the borough with a further 14 left to naturalise, so we can encourage biodiversity, bees, butterflies and things like that. Wildflower Enhancements, we've selected sites that will have a combination of plug plants and seeding and no-mow areas. Fixed penalty notices, we have issued a total of 98 fixed penalty notices between April 21 and coming up to March this year, and 65 of those have already been paid. I thought I'd give you a little overview of some of our back office systems that is helping to improve how residents and councillors report things, and it's called Responder 2, and it enables a more effective and efficient way to report things to the neighbourhood teams. The tasks are allocated to teams via mobile handsets, so that means the teams do not have to keep going backwards and forwards to the office to find out what they need to do, then to go out and do it, because they can stay where they are in the community and get on with the stuff. We've had a successful bid to the government for 286k so that they can enhance the responder system, and we can share that with other authorities. And hopefully if we share it with them, we might get some money back for doing it. And some investments in staff that we have been making to make sure that the council runs a little bit smoothly. We've invested in training, such as police and criminal evidence, so that staff can better carry out their duties, enforcement, and a thing called manual handling train the trainer courses. It's where our staff are trained up to train other of our staff, so then we don't have to get outside bodies to come in and do it. Therefore, we're saving money. And we've also been investing in leadership and management, so that enables our staff to progress through their careers. We've also had mental health first aider courses, so the staff in the community can identify and signpost and help residents, or actually give first aid until help actually arrives. We have an investment in litter, 2 extra neighbourhood operatives that support the neighbourhood teams and the communities where needed have just been done on December the 21st last year. We've done, obviously you all know about the litter bin policy and the optimization of the technology to identify the routes and make them more efficient and effective in the collection services and also the tracking systems. And something I find quite clever is the bins, the smart bins they're called. They've got 4 solar panels and they have a compacting feature in them so that then they can hold more litter than the ordinary bins can. And also they can actually tell operatives when they're getting full. So the operative can go out and and empty them, which I find quite fascinating. We're setting up litter picking hubs across the borough, so residents can come and borrow kits. And already 200 people have registered as litter warriors, and we have delivered 600 litter picking kits. To make it easier for litter warriors, they can now report their sacks for collection online. And litter warriors are now being given garden sacks and gloves, so that as they pick up litter, they can also do some weeding. I'm sure Scrutiny are as proud and as thankful for our much needed litter warriors as I am, although I do think it's quite a shame that we actually need them. We have just invested in a second Karcher cleaner. We already have one that cleans in the mornings. It does the street furniture in the past, but we also now have a second one, which will focus on larger areas of graffiti. Both of the machines work 7 days a week, and the bigger one will actually go off to other parts of the borough as well. Now I'm going to go and talk a little bit about crime. The crime prevention strategy was launched in November of last year, and we have 4 categories: serious violence, organised crime, complex needs and vulnerabilities. The key partners we work with are Essex Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, Health, Essex County Council, Probation Service, Prison Service, Essex County Fire and Rescue, Community Safety Partnership, Education, local councils, social care, Essex Councils for Voluntary Services, Essex Community Safety Network, safeguarding teams, the youth offending teams, independent advisory group, and Safer Essex. These are just some of the key partners that we work with to try and make our borough a safer place. Safer Coastal Partnership has 3 priorities, which are tackling organised crime, gangs and county lines, and drug trafficking, driving down ASB and violent crime in public, hate crimes and possession of weapons, and identifying and supporting the reporting of hidden harms with proactive approach to domestic abuse and sexual violence. We have community safety test and trace support. Test kits are supplied to the public and the partners. And we have COVID marshals supporting and visiting businesses that coordinate days and nights of action, which support the police with the activities and the town centre team, with the increase that we had in the drink spiking, with the See You Safer campaign. Now, this campaign has 40,000 on Facebook, 36,000 visitors on Instagram, with a YouTube view of 1.3K. 430K of funding was secured by the Community Safety Partnership, working with community engagement, support during COVID. One Colchester weekly strategic winter resilience meetings, working with vaccine and booster work, with support for Afghan refugees and asylum seekers. And we also have the Community Response Pack, the Community Can projects and schemes, which will build on strengths, not weaknesses. And that's the Whistle Stop Tour. I don't know if I took 5 minutes though.
Thank you, Bev. I've seen Councillor McCarthy indicate. I'll just take a couple of questions if I may, and then move around the room. Thank you for that. It does seem like you've been doing some good work and continuing on work. Good to hear about One Colchester work continuing on. In particular, I enjoyed the partnership working that went on there, and I do thank the person to my right for all of that positive partnership working. I wanted to ask, as I assume you probably would think I would, about the Sem and Creme, because I had the responsibility of that previously. And when speaking to Penny, who admirably runs that service with care and dedication, when I asked her about increases, they were concerned, first of all, that they would not be competitive, but also concerned for the costs as they are passed on. And I'm concerned about the large increase to the Sem and Creme fees, they are substantial at around 10%. And I'm concerned about passing that on to people, especially at this time with the cost of living crisis and obviously having lost more loved ones than before during COVID. So I wanted, because I know you care about that service too, I wanted to understand how you can square those 2 points really. And that will be my first question, then I'll move around to others.
Thank you, Councillor Corey. Yes, I'm going to admit it was a very difficult decision. It's a decision I didn't want to make because I worried about the increase in the costs. Unfortunately, the problem is the increase in prices, the increase in fuel, the increase in lighting, etc. And although it was difficult at the time, it would have been even worse to do it now because we would have had to increase it even more because of the way the prices for energy and things have already gone through the roof. So although it was a bad decision at the time, it's turned out to be a good decision that we didn't have to do it even more now. But also, we are only a small part of a funeral. The funeral directors, they take a large part. So this is not the whole of the service. We've invested in our cemetery and crematorium, and so we can make sure that we offer the best service that we possibly can. And I think really there's not really an awful lot more I can say apart from the fact that we haven't put our services up, our costs up as much as some. Some of them put them up well over 20%, some put them up even more. But the reason why they've done that is because they haven't had a council that we have that has invested in their crematorium and their services. So when it comes to it, the only option they have is to put it up even more. It was a decision I didn't like to make, and it was a decision I didn't want to make. But unfortunately, the way things stand, I didn't really have much of an alternative.
Okay, Bev, thank you for that answer. Councillor McCarthy, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Oxford. You're absolutely right. It's a broad portfolio that you have. I have 4 questions, but they are quite short. The first one is in reference to today's press release regarding the Udo Road tennis courts and the forthcoming consultation to residents and stakeholders. I'm really pleased that all ward councillors are going to be included, bearing in mind that 2 of the 3 are not members of this administration. Can you please ensure that Councillor Barton and I are kept in the loop throughout that process and are open to offer opinion and scrutinise decisions on this site at any time? My second one is regarding Responder 2, a nice little opportunity for you to plug the IT team. Can we have an ETA on when this is likely to be ready for councillors and residents to use? The third one is regarding the waste bin audit. Bearing in mind that 5 bins have been removed along Layer Road and Bodacea Way in my ward and are yet to be replaced. Can you confirm, I appreciate you may not be able to do this now, can you confirm why the bins on Layer Road were removed and when they're going to be restored? I'd like to see all of them restored. And regarding community engagement, what is being done to enable residents to select their own no-mo areas in their community? For example, in Blenheim Park in my ward, it's already been approached by Eco Colchester as a great place to have a wilding area. So I'd quite like to see a bit of engagement in that. I appreciate, again, maybe something environment panel can be looking into, but if you have any insight, I'd be welcome. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Udo Road, definitely we will keep you informed of everything that is going on. The Responder 2, I haven't actually been given any information as to when. I thought it was already working, but I could be quite wrong on that, and I haven't actually been given any information about when it's going to work. So could I come back to you on that, please? The bins, I didn't know they had been removed, but I wouldn't necessarily know that they had been. So if you want to give me the information as to where they are, they're not now. If you want to give me the information, I can look into that. I do know that with some of the bins, there was fly tipping that was going on in some areas. And so some of the bins were taken away to stop that. And the minute they put the bin back, the fly tipping started again. But I don't know, obviously, if that's in your area or not. So if you can give me some more information on that. And with the no-mow areas, I would have thought that it would be a good idea if residents came to their ward councillors, who then came to us, so we could work together to sort out where the areas are. Because there's some areas that you can do no mowing and various other places. So if residents want to contact you or groups want to contact me, then please ask them to do it and I'll see what I can do to help. I hope that answers your question.
Very helpful. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Bev. That last point was really helpful. And I think, I mean, I know from Wivenhoe, we've been doing a pilot there, which has helped inform the rest of the borough's strategy. And I do think it is best that citizens come forward and speak to us, residents come and talk, and we put it forward as councillors. Just on the bin issue, I think it's really a shame that those bins were lost. I was with Councillor McCarthy speaking to residents, and I just don't understand it really. And I hope that you'll be able to look into that and sort of get hold of the issue, because we need more, not less. And previously we've put more in the high street, and that has been welcomed by many people. And I do think more is better on that issue. I'm sure you'd agree. Okay, other councillors, please. Councillor Chapman. Nigel.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, portfolio holder. Yes, very difficult looking straight through the camera at you. Very helpful, some of those things. And I thank you for saying naturalising the verges rather than rewilding them, because I really don't think we rewild verges. I think that's somewhere for mountain areas. I don't like that expression for letting wildflowers grow. 2 or 3 points I wanted to raise with you, please. I think the main one really is on litter. It's good news. Certainly we've got them coming from in Dedham, the talking litter bins. I think sounds to be very good and very interesting. We'll see how that all works out. I did wonder, and you obviously you said it in your speech to us. You said it's a shame that we do need more litter enforcement and that sort of thing. And I just wonder if you could tell us what the borough is actually doing itself to educate people not to drop litter, or whether they should encourage them to take litter home. Really, I mean, this is very much what should happen. This is what we're trying to do in the countryside, and certainly worked in Dedham, where we've removed a lot of litter bins down there, and it has improved the situation no end. So it doesn't necessarily help to have more litter bins, I would suggest. So we do need to educate people, I think. So perhaps you could just explain how that policy is being carried out. And talking of Dedham, the other thing, I just wonder if there's a policy on public toilets. Again, in Dedham, they're very keen because we have so many visitors into the village. And of course, the public toilets are actually up in the main part of the village, not where the people go. There's an aspiration that we have something down there in due course. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on policy for helping people and increasing that where there is a need. And I think that is clearly a need there. And my final point, I think allotments come within your remit. I just wondered if you could just express a little bit of information about that. I think there's a management plan. Is that being reviewed, I believe? I'm not too sure. And also a bit of information on how the waiting list for allotments is standing at the moment, please. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Nigel. Bev.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Well, with litter, we do campaigns. We have things on the side of buses. We have it on our refuge lorries. We have them on the bins. Unfortunately, there are a minority that think, oh, I finished with what I've got, I should just throw it on the floor. Obviously, if people are there, if our enforcement people are there, then they can do fixed penalty notices. But the problem is we have to have them there at the time. And obviously people will drop litter anywhere. So it's very difficult to have the staff there at the time to catch the person doing it, because you have to catch them first, obviously, to do a fixed penalty notice. I just find it unbelievable that people want to rubbish where they live. If you've got a litter bin, use it. If you haven't, like I was told when I was younger, take it home. But when I say things like that, I'm told, well, you're old fashioned, aren't you? It doesn't work like that anymore. Well, I can't see why it can't. But we do campaigns, posters and things like that. But it's getting through to that hardcore minority that this is something you shouldn't do, you don't need to do, and have respect for yourself and where you live. But I think that's an ongoing problem, and I'm not really sure we'll ever solve it. With public toilets, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Dedham did put in an application, didn't they, to have a public toilet in a car park some years ago? I'm not really sure.
There's a suggestion that we maybe could get some money for disabled toilet, I think. But I don't think that's been decided yet. So I just wondered if that didn't work through, what the policy was in increasing them. Yeah, there was. We haven't heard back on that.
I haven't done an awful lot about public toilets. So can I come back to you on that one? And with allotments, that seems to be an ongoing problem. I found out today that apparently we don't have a waiting list. We haven't had a waiting list for 2 years. But what is being proposed is a proper, decent website so people can go onto a waiting list, can be told when a plot is available and things like that. But unfortunately, at the moment, it isn't up and running because they want to make sure that once they start it, they don't want any gremlins in the works. They don't want it to go wrong. So they're making sure that when it works properly. So there's been a bit of a delay in actually starting it up. I went on the website today as a practice, and it's still not up there. But I'm having regular briefings with officers to say, well, come on, get it going then, because people want allotments. It's come so important since COVID-19 to actually be out there doing, growing things, making yourself feel better because you can see things grow. And if people cannot find out where an allotment is, or if it's vacant, or even say, yes, please, can I have one when one comes up, then we're defeating our own object. But it is still a work in progress, unfortunately. And I think that was it.
Thank you. Councillor Bourne, please, Tina.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Oxford, I appreciate the briefing you gave us at the beginning. It looks like a lot of officers have been doing a lot of things in your portfolio. What I'm interested to know is the political interface that you have with the partnerships, because Colchester is reliant on the partnerships and the relationships that we have in our town to deliver on some of the things that our residents expect us to deliver on. Something like 3 years ago, a previous administration set up the Team 10 with the police, and it was a really successful way of working where an police officer was partnered with a CBC warden, and lots of things were changed in the town centre because of that way that was enabled to work with officers and the political interface that we had there. However, since new administration, we've seen dispersal orders put in place, and there are no visible patrols, and there's been a rise in crime. So what are you doing yourself to make Colchester a safer place? Because that was something that keeps coming back, about people feeling wary of crime and their fear of crime. And the other thing about partnership working that I'm interested in is the relationship with the business sector. Those meetings used to take place with Colback and the Culver Square Centre and Lion Walk Centre. Each of those three business organisations represent a number of small and medium-sized enterprises in the town. And obviously we're going through recovery now and coming out of that, hopefully, and those businesses, we want to be as vibrant as possible. But those meetings, I'm just interested in how those meetings are going. Are you attending? and what's your plan to work with those businesses on crime and to help to give them some hope that the losses that they have faced over the last 2 years can, there is a rainbow at the, well, probably not a pot of gold, but there is something at the end of a rainbow, or actually there is a rainbow there for them to climb over. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Vaughan. I regularly have briefings with Inspector Huddleston, where I raise things that have, obviously, safety is, people don't feel safe in the town centre. We regularly have nights of action where everybody gets together, the street wardens, street pastors, I can't remember what they're called, TCAP. It's a partnership where police get together and they discuss things about the town centre and what is happening, and they come out on the nights of action. We have the police regularly. I don't know why people keep saying there aren't any police, because with the recent spiking thing that we had, the police were praised with the fact that their presence was there and how they worked well with the clubs and the pubs and the bouncers. I don't think you're supposed to call them bouncers now, then, were you? To actually get together, to work together, to make sure the town centre is a safe place. We've also done a campaign with Keep Safe at Night. So people will, we give them pointers as to how to keep themselves safe, like telling people where they're going, giving people their mobile phone numbers, making sure they have a safe route home, like a taxi and things like that. So we do work together. We did used to have some meetings with the businesses, but that seems to have tapered off at the end of last year. We used to have everybody together. We had the Lion Hotel, we had the George, we had all those people together as well, but they seem to have tapered off, and I'm not really sure what happened to that. So I'm going to have to try and find that one out. But I'll work with anybody who wants to work with me, and I'll go wherever I'm invited. But I do actually have to be invited. But anybody wants to invite me anywhere, I'll go there and I'll talk to them. I'll work with anybody who wishes to work with me. I hope that helps.
Councillor Bourne, is that okay? I just wanted to ask, do you attend the One Colchester meetings, the partnership meetings?
Yes. Yes, I do. Yeah, I think that's what that was called. Where all the businesses got together in the town centre. I think that was called One Colchester, wasn't it?
No, One Colchester
Oh, no.
is the strategic partnership with mainly the public sector organisations, and it does also combine with the community safety partnership as well.
Yes, I do. Sorry. Yeah, I'm getting my committees muddled up. Yes, I do.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead, did you indicate there? Okay, Lorcan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Oxford, for the presentation. I'm also, just to pick up on Councillor McCarthy's question, I'm also interested in the tennis courts issue. I've heard about this for the first time today, and I guess I'm just wondering if you can give any clarity about what's actually being requested. I understand that there's a call going out to invite groups that might want to run some sort of complementary sports service. I just wonder if you are able to give any more detail about kind of what it is that's actually being asked for there. Aside from that, I'm also picking up on the issues around partnership working, and as you know, I understand that the previous administration obviously invested in new CCTV, and that plans were in place to work with Culver Square and Lion Walk to share the cameras, to share the radio system as well. with the aim of, helping the daytime economy against threats like shoplifting, etc., by working together and sharing that information. So I'm just wondering, has that been taken forward? Has that happened? And if so, how is that going? And then a final one on street cleaning and littering. I have, problem roads in my ward, like I'm sure we all do, where there's, persistent problems with uncleanliness and littering. And, I obviously encourage residents to report that via the system, and, as indeed I'm sure we all do, and I report things myself. But there are areas where the problems are pretty constant. And when I've raised it, often the response is that residents need to report this. But it seems to me that in those cases, a more regular scheduled street cleaning for those problem areas would be sensible, and that by not doing that, we're kind of handing residents a job that really should lie with the council. If we know that there's a persistent issue in a particular area that needs to be cleaned regularly, then it seems slightly odd to ask residents to keep reporting that if we are already aware of that situation. So I just wonder if you have a view on that, and whether certain areas might be appropriate for to be on a regular schedule of street cleaning where we have persistent problems like that.
Thank you. Yes. Well, with the litter, we do have what we call hot spots and blot spots that have particular attention paid to them for persistent mess, really, I suppose. But also, you've got to try and find out whether or not this is a fly tipping problem, because that takes a lot more effort to find out, if you can, who is doing it, trace it, and then prosecute for it. But we do have things called hotspots and blot spots. So if you have some, if you want to report them, I can see if I can get them added to the list. With the CCTV, yes, as far as I know, they are all working together, but I think there is a problem with things called data protection as to what they can and what they can't share. I don't know if you've actually been into where the CCTV is and actually had a look. It is fascinating. I could spend all day there just watching how they do it and how they can pinpoint one person and follow them around to see where they're going and what they're doing, and then act, because they found them, they kept them there. So I suggest that you, if you can, go and have a look at it, because it's absolutely fascinating. With Udo Road, we have somebody who is interested in doing what they call paddle boarding. I'm not really sure what that is. I think it's where you get a paddle and a ball and you bash it at each other. I don't know if that's right or not. So we've got an interest in that, and they seem really, really keen to actually take over some of the areas to start up a new sports thing called paddle boarding. I think that answers your questions, or yes?
Yes, thank you. And like Councillor McCarthy, I also like to be made aware and consulted and involved in that process as it goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I know Councillor McCarthy was going to bring that up on your behalf.
I was just about to hand an olive branch to my colleagues in Newtown and Christchurch, but no dice.
Yes, as it's a very close ward to the area. Thank you. I've seen no other indications, so I'm just going to ask one more question of my own, just about the future of the market, really, and how we ensure the market always looks good, because we seem to have sort of continued problems where it doesn't always look up to scratch. And I understand that's always been an issue. And is its future, what's its future? What plans for the market at the moment?
I went out for a tour of the market just before Christmas and asked them how they were. Obviously, they have been struggling with COVID, like everybody really, but they are quite happy. They don't seem to feel that there are any problems apart from the trade because of COVID. They're happy where they are. They like where they are. We've also given them Hessian bags that they can give away for free. That's more environmentally friendly than the plastic and things like that. And as far as I know, the market is beginning to pick up now. Obviously, like a lot of businesses, it suffered with COVID, but now it's starting to be on the up. And they don't seem, or they didn't talk to me about any specific problems they had apart from the loss of trade from COVID. So as far as I know, they're okay and it's starting to pick up again.
Thank you. About the sort of infrastructure of the market, is any more investment going into that planned reoccurring at all?
At the moment, I haven't got any information about that. So can I come back to you with that regarding that?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Okay, are there any other comments from councillors? Any other questions? No? Okay, at that point, I thank you, Bev, and thank you in advance for some of the answers you'll come back with to councillors as well. And we look forward to seeing how the rest of the portfolio goes for you over the coming year. So thank you, unless there's any final comments.
No, just thank you for having me. And thank you for the questions, which obviously I do apologise for the ones that I haven't been able to answer. But obviously, if you have anything else you can think of afterwards, you know what my email address is. Please feel free to email me and I will give you as much of an answer as I possibly can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bev. Okay, we move on to item number 11, which is the capital programme and medium-term financial forecast for the budget 2020-23. We have your say. Councillor Martin Warnes wants to come back. So I will invite Councillor Lissamore, you're kindly here to support this paper, invite you to the front. And we also have Paul Cook, the Chief Officer, Head of Finance, here this evening online. So Councillor Martin Warnes, I'll come to you first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a point of clarification if Sue would be good enough to give this to me. In the medium-term financial plan papers presented to the full council on the 20th of October last year, on page 59, it talked about the assumptions for 22 to 26, 4 years, for the local council tax reduction scheme take-up as compared to pre-COVID levels. And it talked about, and it threw it in basically one block across all 4 years, saying plus 12.5%. Okay, but in the papers that you've got in front of you on page 36, it talks about the LCTS increase take-up being 12.5% each year for the next 4 years. So could I ask Sue to tell me whether or not this is a typo, or are you really expecting a 50% take-up over the next 4 years? Increased take-up of people seeking help through the local council tax reduction scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warnes. Councillor Lissamore, you.
Just speaking with the officer, could be that Paul may want to come in here. He may have an answer for that. If not, I will get a response to the councillor.
Thank you, Chair. The 12.5% increase in the table on page 28 is the increase compared to pre-COVID levels in each year. For funding calculations, these are actuals in the year. So, for example, on council tax collection in an earlier row, each year we're saying, you know, we expect to collect 99% of the debit rather than those being incremental 99%. So the same assumption on local council tax support take-up applies as was earlier reported. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think Councillor Warnes said it was going up 50%. And from what Paul's just said, that doesn't seem to be the case. So Sue, as you said, if you can just take that answer from Paul and give some clarity to Councillor Warnes, that would be helpful. I think when we discussed it and you, Councillor Lissamore, came as portfolio holder, we talked through the local council tax support scheme here, and there was going to be no changes to it in terms of the level of support that's given. But we did ask, of course, about the pressures on people, and we all acknowledge that's likely. So I assume there will be an increased take up, and that will be budgeted for as explained. So hopefully any answer, if it makes it clearer, could be shared with Councillor Warnes and with this panel as well. Thank you. Now to the item itself, I come back to you, Sue, to present, and to the officers who'll be working with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. This is your meeting, so the papers are here as read, and await your comments and your questions.
Okay, thank you. Will there be any further presentation of the report, or that's it for now? I mean, the budget workshop was very helpful, running through the items as they stand. And I will happily take it as read then and ask other members to comment on this report. We did have discussions at the portfolio holder, at the spokespersons briefings, and I did have conversations with the chief officer then, and we were talking about the impacts of the MRP possible changes, but that doesn't impact this budget. But overall, when we've spoken before, there are sort of minor changes in places where you'll be making savings, and some small increases in the budget, but essentially at the moment I have no further questions than the ones I asked at the briefing, and I think political differences will come out in the budget setting meeting. But are there any other questions from the panel at this point? I see none. Okay, this is a major item in front of us, so I do just want to check that we have all reviewed it. And if we want to make any comment now or recommendations now, then please do, as it will go to Cabinet tomorrow. But also it will come to full council in the full budget meeting, where I'm sure we'll have quite a debate, and I'm sure there'll be recommendations from each side as well. Councillor Bourne.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at Appendix A, page, I haven't got a page number here. Appendix A, medium-term financial forecasts and assumptions, first table on previous year's budget. The capital financing line that goes down to the brackets 276 for 25-26. Can you just explain why the impact that will have on our on your current strategy for financing, and why the drop there seems significant?
Okay, happy to bring the officer, Paul, in. If he has, or I can get back to the council.
Thank you, Chair. Each year when we're resetting the capital programme, we look at the capital financing costs, which is a combination of the effect of any new schemes coming into the programme, but also reprofiling of existing approved schemes. So those figures in 3445 are additional estimated capital financing costs, which slightly reduce in 56, perhaps because of debt repayment or increased capital receipts. So if required, Chair, we could provide a more detailed calculation. Thank you.
Just a question for the portfolio holder. Are you confident that that reprofiling is the best that can be done at the moment?
We have a lot of uncertainties coming up in the future. Obviously, we hope that inflation will stay under control. We hope that we do not have any more lockdowns. We are assured, and I take this opportunity to thank all the officers that have been dealing with these figures. I've been so impressed by the team, the finance team that we have here, and I have every confidence that they have done their best to ensure those figures are as correct as they can be.
Thank you, Councillor Lismore. Just one question from me about new homes bonus. The principle of reducing the use of new homes bonus in the revenue account has been set for a number of years. There's a larger chunk being used this year, pretty much 2 million, 1.954. What is that being mainly used for? And then how are we budgeting ahead for that, the drop of £1 million out of the budget next year? How will we cover that gap?
It is one of the jobs that we have been doing since last May took control, to look very carefully, because to be honest and to be political, we have not agreed with some of the past expenditure of the new homes bonus. We did well this year, better than we expected, and we thank the government for that. What we want to make sure, we don't know what money we're going to be getting in the future, if any, and we want to make sure that the money we do get is spent on the projects that the new homes bonus should be used for. That is areas of the borough that have suffered because of new housing being built. So at present, we are still working through certain projects that are building up in the future to see how the new homes bonus can be allocated to them.
On that basis, is there an example you can give then how you've spent the new homes bonus differently from this £2 million this year or for this budget?
That's not something that I would wish to discuss at this point. That will be coming out in the future, next few weeks.
Okay, it's harder to scrutinise, so we'll have to do that at a later point. We'll have to do that in a more political setting if we can't scrutinise it now. Okay, I have Councillor Bourne, and then I saw Councillor Lorcan-Whitehead and then McCarthy. So Councillor Bourne, please.
Thank you, Chair. I do remember in previous scrutiny panel meetings where we sat here and a previous administration hadn't put any, or had some detail missing for future funding. And that seems to be the case here now. And that previous administration were criticised for that. So it sounds to me as though there is some funding that is going to be, some resources that are going to be shifted, but we don't know to where until quite late on in the day, post-scrutiny, so there won't be, the element of scrutiny will have passed. And I think that's quite a challenge for us as a scrutiny panel to look at the whys and wherefores of political differences aside. We all completely understand that there are political decisions that are made because that's the point of the budget. And each party or administration will choose to move that money into different pots. But our job as a scrutiny panel is to scrutinise those pots and to look at the rationale for that. And there is no rationale for that part of the new homes budget, which is significant. It's just a comment, really, Chair, having gone through scrutiny for many years.
I can just come back on that. I mean, I've sat at scrutiny for years, and I chaired the finance and scrutiny panel for a number of years as well. When the new administration took over 14 years ago, so I know how frustrating it is. However, it is, I believe, the scrutiny panel's role to scrutinise and be confident that the figures are correct. the detail of how some of that money is going to be spent is not crucial to the scrutiny panel deciding that the finances are sound.
I think it was interesting when you were criticising how spending was done before, but when I asked you for an example, I think that's where I was getting at, in a sense that you said it wasn't done so well in the future, but we don't know how it's going to be done in the past. And I'm asking how it's going to be done in the future differently to before. And we can't scrutinise that from your answer. But I'll take that and move on. Councillor Whitehead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Lissamore. I also would like, I'd prefer if we had some detail to scrutinise the content of the decisions as well. So I'll just add my my voice to that comment as well. In terms of the in the report it outlines that we have upcoming the revision of spending needs assessments. This is at 7.5 in the report. It's one of the main financial risks to the council. I wonder if you could tell us what you take to be the main risks arising from the revision of spending needs assessments, and if you could tell us what we're doing in order to mitigate those risks.
As that as a factual question, may I ask Paul to come in again as an officer to give you a factual response, and then I'll come back afterwards.
Okay, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I propose new homes bonus, just to add to what Councillor Lismore was saying. Of course, in Appendix H of the report, there is an analysis of the 2 million, which may be useful. So the individual authority needs assessments were probably last revised in 2011-12. So they got quite out of date in terms of reflecting current service requirements, population changes, etc. And the main driver, I think, will be the levelling up agenda. So it really depends how that will be interpreted. And we could see quite significant switches from some authorities and gains by others. We would expect with such fundamental change there'd be quite a long consultation process leading up to the 23-24 finance settlement, which obviously will endeavour to keep members up to date on any emerging proposals. So it is one we got to watch quite carefully, because in the 22-23 settlement, it was announced it would be transitional protection for losing authorities, but it also explains that protection only applies to base elements of the settlement and not one-off elements such as the services grants and new homes bonus. So we do need to be careful on that, and we will try to keep members informed of any consultation proposals that emerge. Thank you, Chair.
If I could just add to that, the levelling up agenda, we do not really know what that means as yet. Obviously, it's exciting. We have to make sure as a council, we know that we have severe areas of deprivation that would really benefit from levelling up funding. And we will have to see how this progresses and how we can do our absolute best to ensure that all areas of our borough gain from this funding.
Thank you. Councillor Bourne, you indicated again.
I did. Thank you, Chair. Appendix H, allocation of new homes bonus. Line 11, I suppose that's the £623,000 that you are planning to spend, Councillor Lissamore, on something that you're not prepared to tell us, so we can't scrutinise, that no doubt will be coming forward as a nice surprise for people before the elections, possibly. So I presume that's the pot of funding that we're looking at there. And also under item 11 on the capital programme, as you mentioned, Councillor Lissamore, the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities work, the changes to the capital framework under minimum revenue provision. Several years ago, a very famous MP in Essex, Mr. Pickles, told local councils to get busy by sweating our assets, because councils were not productive, weren't effective, and councils went out and actually had a big change to their programme at that time and started to sweat their assets and set up companies in order to become more business and commercially focused. It now seems that the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities is going to penalise those companies like Colchester that did actually start to sweat their assets and become more business and commercially focused, by lumping on us something that we will find possibly difficult to be able to stand for our Amphora suite of companies. So I'm just wondering how those discussions went, and how other local councils, those that we're benchmarked against and those that are similar to us with other in-house companies, are managing, and whether you have spoken to them as a finance team and as finance portfolio holders across the patch.
I was actually in a meeting this afternoon where we were discussing it again, and one of the concerns that was raised at the meeting is that some other councils do not seem to be as concerned about this as we are. And the question was asked, why is that? Are we overreacting? Do we have more to worry about than others? I think it was a combination of responses. Some finance officers are keeping it to themselves, perhaps, and not talking as much as we are about the possible problem. Some councils perhaps have just not recognised yet that it's could be a problem. The consultation responses have to be in I think maybe it's the second week in February. Ours is written and is all ready to go in. We are just waiting to just make sure that there's no last minute government tweaks before it is sent in. I also heard this afternoon that there's an area group of finance officers, and they will be making their own responses as well. So we are responding very vigorously to the consultation, and we will wait to see how it pans out.
Thank you, Councillor Lissamore, and I, as you would have heard on the briefing the other day, I very much support a vigorous response on that. So if that is how you are responding to say that this is unhelpful to councils like ours who have been commercially minded and sweated the assets, as Councillor Bourne stated, then it really would harm us and not allow us to be entrepreneurial, which we won awards for about 18 months ago. Just on that Appendix H, as it's helpful to understand the breakdown, I assume the answer is yes to the 623 question that Councillor Bourne asked. I just wanted to ask about feasibility costs at item 3, £250 of feasibility costs. And secondly, to ask about the support to tendering Colchester Borders local plan, £250 allocation, £1,000 allocation. I assume that's probably towards DPD work, but if there's anything other than that, I would like to know.
We all know that we are being very proactive when it comes to that project. We do obviously need some funds allocated for officer time to make sure that if that project goes ahead, that it is the most sustainable it can be, that it's the best garden community that it possibly can be, hence why the money has been allocated to that. Sorry, could you remind me what your first point was, please?
So there was a question from Councillor Bourne about the £623,000 for the sport of one-off schemes. She was assuming that was the bit where you were saying more news would come out. But my second question was about item 3 on Appendix H, feasibility costs, £250,000 for feasibility costs. What are those?
They are for feasibility costs.
Feasibility into what? Of what?
A range of different projects.
Okay. Would we be able to find out more detail about that? Is that a written response we could ask for?
As time progresses, the schemes will be made, you'll be made aware of the schemes.
Okay, I'll ask those in written form going forward. Okay. Councillor McCarthy, I saw you indicate, and that is all for now.
Did. Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Lissamore, just reading through the minutes when you were in the Q&A, Chair, a panel member mentioned that in a government review, there'd be a potential 9% increase in council tax by 24-25. In Appendix A, the medium-term financial forecast and assumptions, for 24-25, it says we could potentially retain 14.2 million. Is that with that 9% increase potentially, or is that a population increase and we're expecting more council tax contributions? One more question. 14 million is still, with those increases, only about, well, 90% of the council tax will still be going to Essex County Council. Is there any plans to retain more of our council tax, our residents pay in Colchester rather than it going to Essex County? Thank you.
Perhaps I need to declare an interest as an Essex County Councillor here, but the allocation of council tax, we in Colchester obviously want as much of it as we possibly can to spend on our residents. There is no doubt about that. However, the need that Essex County Council has, and I have been, former cabinet member at county, I've been round that table. The need for adult social care is so huge. It is mind-blowing. It is beyond anything that a borough councillor can even see on any papers. It is out of this world, and it's getting worse. We are all living longer. We are all requiring more help. My father-in-law passed away last October, and in the last month of his life, he'd never had an ounce of help from anybody. But in that last month, the care that we got for him was absolutely outstanding. We somehow have to pay for that. And the huge majority of our council tax money goes towards adult social care. It has to. Councillor Bentley always quotes this, and he's absolutely right. People say to him, how do you sleep at night knowing about all the potholes? And he says, I don't sleep at night, not because of potholes, but because I'm scared that there won't be the money to look after our elderly. And I think that really puts it into perspective. That is the number one money. We circulated it on social media about 6 months ago, and we'll be doing so again in the next few weeks, a breakdown of how much money actually goes to all the different departments at Essex County Council. And adult social care tax, I think, if I'm remembering rightly, it's over 80% of the funding goes to adult social care. So it has to go there. It has, and it's only going to get worse. And we have got to work out how we can fund our needs as we get older. I think on the other figures, I'll leave the officers to get a written response to you because they're factual questions.
Thank you. It seems to me that we need some of our grants restored from the central government, and that would help us pay, and that will help us sleep at night if we could pay for both the potholes and for decent social care. But that's something we will continue to lobby for or vote for.
Sorry, if I can just add in there, there is only one pot of money regardless of who has that money, whether it is government, Essex, Colchester. There is only one pot of money. And if Colchester has that pot of money, then they've got to find the money for adult social care. So there is only one pot.
With the record amount of fraud that's been going on, that Lord Agnew resigned over, I think there's much better spending, and we know this, and the LGA studies show that local governments spend money better. So I will lobby for that going forward, that we spend it locally rather than government. I'll move on. I think we've got no more questions on this report. So I thank you, Councillor Lissamore, for coming and supporting it. Thank you, Paul Cook, as well, for your answers. And in terms of recommendations, we've made some verbally tonight and asked questions, which some of which you'll come back to us on, some of which you've said we have to wait, but we appreciate that. And of course, I'm sure we'll come up with other comments as the budget programme continues to roll forward. And I want to just say thank you again, especially to Paul Cook for the work done with the workshop that we took part in as councillors the other night. Thank you. So let's just review and agree that we have no further comment on this report apart from the ones we verbalised this evening. Can we agree on that? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lissamore. I assume you'll stay for the next item, which is item 12, Housing Revenue Account Estimates and Housing Investment Programme. And we have Darren on the call as well to support us this evening. I will go to you, Councillor Lissamore, and see if there's any presentation from officers as well.
No, the papers are as read in front of you. Thank you.
Okay, so again, no presentation from the officer. We will go around the room and ask questions on this report. Councillors.
Sorry, Chair, would you like me to say a few words, Chair?
Sorry, yeah, Darren, if you're happy to. Briefly.
Yeah, absolutely. This paper sets out the annual housing revenue account budget and the housing investment programme budget that's going to Cabinet tomorrow night. It's set out as two appendices. Appendix A is the revenue budget. And as a reminder for the panel, the HRA is a ring-fenced account which contains expenditure and income of the council acting as a landlord for its housing stock. So this report sets out the proposals for next year's rent increase, which is in line with government policy of consumer price index plus 1%. It sets out a proposed management fee for CBH and a position of the HRA balances. It also includes a 5-year medium-term functional forecast and a refresh of our 30-year HRA business plan model. There haven't been any real changes in the government policy that impact on this budget, but just a few things to point out. As I said, the HRA business plan has been updated. That's also being considered by Cabinet tomorrow night, and the asset management strategy is being finalised, and all the outcomes from those pieces of work are included in this report. I would probably just highlight just a couple of points in the report at paragraph 5.27. This shows a prudential indicator we included when the debt cap was abolished to help members understand the affordability of all our debt. Basically, it measures how easily we can repay the interest costs on our borrowing, and it's set out in the report. We'd reasonably expect this to be in the region of about 1.5, and as you can see in all years of the budget, it's actually in excess of that. So you know the debt is more than affordable, and also includes paragraph 7.18 our debt curve. So most members be familiar with this. Basically shows our ability to manage our debt in the long term. And it actually shows our debt increasing in the short term as we invest this in the capital programme, but then it starts to reduce in later years as we start to repay the debt. Appendix B, this is our housing capital programme, all based on the investment needs of our asset management strategy, continues to reflect the investment proposals agreed by previous cabinet in terms of acquisitions and new builds, and also the report also includes a provision for the cost of works at Elfrida House, along with provision in future years for our continued investment in the sheltered housing refurbishment programme. So that's just a few things to add.
Thank you, Darren. One question I wanted to ask is about the Shrub End Depot. That has been an issue for many, many years in terms of CBC wanting to improve that, but the strange nature in which that we have a site that in the middle of it, there's an Essex County Council site, the waste, what we call the tip, pretty much. I see that investment is going into the depot site, but I don't see anything from ECC there. So how is that working? How are we working around them? Are there any new plans in which we can better use that site in a more efficient way? And I just wondered if that can be explained, because it is in this report this evening.
If I may come in on that, obviously the depot is within my ward and my division as a county councillor as well, so I know the site incredibly well. The investment that's being made at the moment is essential investment for the Colchester Borough Council side. It does not have an impact on the Essex County Council site. One of the first jobs that we as an administration did was met on site with the Environment Cabinet member from county to discuss ways that we can move forward. Because of the environment bill that is coming in, things are a little bit on hold at the moment because we need to wait and see how that is all going to pan out. There are going to be changes in both the way Colchester Borough Council need to collect and dispose of their waste, as well as the way Essex County Council dispose of their waste. However, we are talking, and I think that is something that has not really happened in the last 14 years. So as long as we keep talking, we have a good site there that has a good amount of space, even though it is shared between two. What we need to make sure is that that site is as productive as it possibly can be, is as environmentally friendly as it possibly can be, and ensure that it is the right site for the residents of Colchester. So there are many prongs going out from there to see how we can improve the area. But the investment that's going on at the moment is on the CBC side and is essential, but it is also mobile. So if at any time, for example, the weighbridge needed to be moved because the site was reconfigured, then that can be moved. So none of the investment here will be wasted if any changes are made in the future.
Thank you. I know we definitely tried talking over the years, so I'm glad you are continuing that conversation and getting some good results, but I understand the answer in terms of the government changes in the paper as well. Thank you. Are there any other questions from members on this paper? Councillor Bourne, please.
Thank you, Chair. So there's three, this is item 12, isn't it? Sorry, I'm flicking between various screens here. So the three housing papers here are, I'd like to say thank you very much to the officers. I know Councillor Lissamore will thank them, and the housing portfolio holder as well, for producing an awful lot of information here. Sorry, I've got my coat on. I've just caught myself on the camera. I look like I'm going home. I'm not planning on going home. It's just flipping freezing in here. My fingers are blue. There's an awful lot of information in here. For the non-housing expert, it's really, really helpful. And it's just helpful to have a presentation and a little bit of a narrative around why this money has to go here and what this money is being used for. I think the report breaks it down really, really well. And it's good to see that we are, as a council, regardless of the administration, continuing to build housing for people who have a desperate need for housing. And the figures going forward in the next 4 years are very encouraging. I'm glad to see that despite some protestations this time last year on us, perhaps Colchester building too much housing, that you are continuing to build. So that's great. I'd also like to say that our housing investment programme looks really, really good from a scrutiny point of view, and the debt profile looks good. I don't have any questions around that. I just want to say the 3 reports are extremely well put together and very, very helpful for us as scrutiny to actually scrutinise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bourne. I was going to say a similar thing, actually, that it's good to see the continual investment into housing in the borough, whether buying back council properties or building new ones. There has been a programme on running for some time. It's good to see that continuing on. The one thing I wanted to say, I mean, I absolutely thank Darren and the officers and those behind the housing work that's going on. But I do also understand the role of CBH is a really important one for me, and how that arm's length organisation carries out work, not just the day-to-day of looking after our housing stock and our residents in it, but also doing a lot of the project work and working with our company. And I just wanted to say to you, Sue, as a political portfolio holder, and I would say it to Councillor Ellis if he was here as well, that I feel that sometimes we are going away from using CBH and the companies contract elsewhere, our companies. And I just want to ensure that that relationship is only strengthened, that we do use the expertise of CBH and keep that social value that CBH offer, that they can then use to offset some of the costs that they have for looking after our residents in such a good way like they did during COVID. So I think it's probably a discussion for another time as well, about how we ensure that our companies are not just going to other bidders, but are making sure they use CBH for its excellent management, project management skills as well. Don't know if you have any response to that or whether it's something to continue talking about.
The only thing I'd say is obviously as councillors of quite long standing, we've worked with CBH. I think I came in as a councillor the year after it became an ALMO. So, you know, I've known it for almost all its time, and I sat on the board for a couple of years as well, right at the beginning. We always have CBH in our mind when it comes to things, but we've got to make sure, as you talked earlier, you know, that Eric Pickles said, you know, we've got to be commercially viable. We have to make sure that when we're looking at particular projects, particular schemes, that they are they go to the best bidder, as it were. And some of the time that will be CBH, but on occasions sometimes it won't be. However, every aspect of a project would be taken into consideration, and CBH will always be prominent in our minds.
Thank you, especially for social value, and the local environmental impact of using them could outweigh by a few thousand a cheaper bidder, but I think I do understand what you say. Councillor Bourne, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I wasn't going to raise that, but myself and Councillor Chapman, we're both directors of Colchester Borough Homes, and we both sit on scrutiny. So I'm just understanding from what you're saying there, Councillor Lismore, that contracts have been, quotes have been sought from, we're not ignoring Colchester Borough Homes. I would like to know, have a surety that they are asked to tender for certain contracts as well as other bidders, and that has always been understood. But the value we get from having a well-known partner that's actually wholly owned subsidiary of the council is that the relationships that we have between those two organisations are very strong, and that's the value of having a wholly owned subsidiary within your own domain, that you should be able to use those expertise, and where that best value is not successful, then there is feedback given. I think that's all. We're not asking for an unfair advantage, but there are certain things that Colchester Borough Homes, being within the council, can provide that a company outside the council cannot provide.
I can only agree. Yeah, they are always, as I say, at the forefront of our minds, forefront of officers' minds. We know them inside out. We know how they work, and we know the added benefits that they can give to a project and to the community. I agree.
Thank you. I'm glad you agree, and I'll just make it clear that as board members, both Nigel and and Tina there have an interest, but it's not a direct interest. You make no money out of that position, and it is simply that you recognise you have those different roles. But thank you for that contribution. Are there any other questions at all? Comments? Councillor Whitehead, Lorcan.
Thank you, Chair. And I understand that there were changes to the rules around the use of right to buy receipts introduced last year, in April last year, which included allowing a portion of right to buy receipts to be spent on supplying new shared ownership and first homes, rather than just being reserved for supplying housing at affordable and social rents. And extending the one-to-one replacement target to include shared ownership and first homes as well. So I just wonder if there's any, if there are any plans to make use of that extra leeway to use right to buy receipts in that way. I mean, I would share my view, which would be that would not be a good thing to do, because it would further deplete our council housing stock. And that's the kind of housing that we need above all to tackle the crisis in unaffordability of housing. But I just wonder if you're aware of those changes and if there's any intention to change the way that we use right to buy receipts in that way.
I think as that is a policy question, really comes under Councillor Ellis. So I think we get a written response from Councillor Ellis to you, because that is as I say, deviating really into his policy.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it, written response.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. And I think Councillor Ellis does empathise, and I would be happy to ask Councillor Ellis if he was here about putting a moratorium, a pause on the right to buy scheme to allow councils to recoup and restock. But Sue, I won't ask you that question because it is more for the portfolio holder for housing. So if there are no other questions, once again, we're asked to note this report, to review and to comment. I think we've made our comments, and Councillor Lissamore and the officers have heard those. But again, we've reviewed it and can accept it and agree to pass it on to Cabinet for tomorrow. All three of the papers. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you again, Sue. Thank you to Darren and the officers in his team.
Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. We'll move on to item 13. Item 13, recommendations from the scrutiny subgroup on the youth zones. So I will report briefly on this. We held 2 meetings looking into the issue of the youth zone and how to support the aspirations of a youth zone going forward, and to give recommendations to go on to the Cabinet. In the first meeting, I chaired this as a subgroup of scrutiny and took away a number of actions to speak to CBC officers, to ask a number of questions of them, to ask questions of Essex County Council officers, to ask questions of the Town Deal Board. And also we did arrange for a tour of the townhouse that I did go on in order to ask some more questions about that as well. All in all, I think we spoke honestly there. I thank the members who were on that, on those 2 meetings, working cross-party. And what we have in front of us this evening on page 115 and 116 are the recommendations that have come from that group at 3.3. So I will just read those out very quickly. The recommendations to put to Cabinet as formal recommendations are: the subgroup is disappointed at the missed opportunity to provide a youth zone for Colchester via the Town Deal, but accepts that a youth zone will not form one of the Town Deal projects. The subgroup recommends that in the short to medium term, the Council cooperates with Essex County Council to boost youth services throughout the borough, such as those at the Townhouse, supporting these and an increase in outreach activities. It is noted that the aspirations of the youth zone and the cross-party support in principle. The subgroup recommends that an ambition be maintained for a youth zone to be completed in Colchester Borough by 2030. It is recommended that the council continue to engage with Onside to outline the council's ambitions and expectations and to understand Onside's criteria for optimum site selection and critical issues for inclusion in a business case for a youth zone serving Colchester Borough. It is also recommended that the council engages with the One Colchester Partnership to take the ambition of a youth zone from principle to reality, including ways to gain contributions from partners. And finally, the subgroup is convinced that for a youth zone to successfully serve the whole borough, the commitment yes, that's a weird spelling of commitment there, but
sorry, Mr. Chairman, that's concomitant.
Oh, okay. My dyslexia, not being able to understand the word. And the project-specific transport plan for the proposed location must be comprehended, costed, and funded to guarantee that a future youth zone in the borough is accessible to all. Thanks, Owen, and thank you for adding in that extra word. I don't remember saying that. Oh, Councillor Willits, is that you?
Yes, I must admit to it, Chairman.
Was it just to trip me up as I read them out? Okay, so we have those 5 recommendations there, and I do thank Councillor Willits. I think you did make some slight adjustments that were agreed upon, apart from that difficult word. Again, I thank those who contributed. Are there further contributions or comments this evening? Councillor Willits, please.
Yes, Chairman. I think the report that has come forward and the deliberations of the subcommittee were very sound, including the recommendations on the way to proceed. It has certainly been a possibility that we could have moved forward quickly. And I was certainly convinced, having talked to other members, that we should be moving forward quickly on a youth zone. But as ever, when we come to consider the detail of what is involved, what has to be done, what has to be put in place, it became ever more obvious, that this was not a project which could be done in 1 or 2 years, that this was really a 5-year project if we were going to do it properly. But it might well have been that if we laid our hands on the existing premises in just down the road, the townhouse, it could well be that an interim arrangement should be made. But I think the report does strike the right balance of wishing to have a youth zone, but at the same time recognizing the difficulties if the project is to be done properly. I have a sort of comment, and I will be proposing a change to the wording. If I can deal with the comment first, on item 5, or bullet point 5, starting, it is recommended that the council engages the One Colchester Partnership. I know partnerships are in the vogue at the moment, and matrix working, where lots of people add a small amount, and sometimes it's very difficult to see what is being added and what its value is. That is the style of the moment. But I'm an old-fashioned project manager who believes in management precision, and that there should be someone who is obviously directly responsible for delivery of any project. And I just wonder about the wording of bullet point 5, where we hope to engage with the One Colchester Partnership to take ambition for a youth zone from principle to reality. It's great, but it doesn't really provide us with the ability to say it was that person or organization that didn't do it if the youth zone doesn't appear. And I would have hoped we could have had a stronger wording along the lines of, the One Colchester Partnership was asked to produce concrete plans to deliver a youth zone in principle from reality by a given date. And appreciate that that was that I was not in the majority on that, but I just do reiterate this point, Chairman, that I believe every project there should be someone who is, or an organisation, even if it's done in the concept of partnership working, that there must be someone responsible who will take the praise if it's a magnificent success and will have their pelvis nailed to a cake stand if it's an abysmal failure. The point on which I really worry is the introduction of a delivery date of 2030. In our earlier considerations, we saw this, particularly with the information from onside, we saw this as a 5-year project at the most to deliver a youth zone from first principles. If we start this year, and there's no reason why we shouldn't start the feasibility of it this year, then it should be deliverable by 2027. And I think it is a very sluggish ambition in bullet point 3 to say that it should be completed by 2030. And I would propose that we delete the 2030 and reinsert the 2027. I believe targets should be challenging. I believe on the information that we were given, it is possible with a fair wind and a lot of thought and a lot of effort and drive behind it to deliver this by 2027. And I think that is the date we should have had in our report. So I'd formally propose that we bring in an earlier, more ambitious date, which better sets out what I believe is the wish of the subgroup, the scrutiny panel, and I hope the council.
Thank you, Councillor Willits. So 2 points there and 1 clear recommendation. Pam, can I ask you to think, as I go to the rest of the panel, you are still chair of One Colchester, just if there's anything around that those words within that bullet point 5, whether there's anything within that, or just any confidence you can give us about taking that to One Colchester. So if I can leave that with you, I'll come back to you on that. I'll go to the rest of the panel, and I will go round actually the panel and ask for views, because often it's me speaking. I want to make sure we get the full view, because we only had a few of us representing on that subgroup. So Councillor Willits has put forward the proposal about changing the timescale from 2030 down to 2027. And I'd like to hear views on that really. As we go around. So I'd like to ask all members really their views. I don't know which way to start. I'll start, I usually go to my right, so I'll continue to do that. Councillor Bourne, any view, please?
No, you've heard my views before. I'm not adding to them.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy, I know you're substituting, but a view from you, please.
I'm substituting, but for in my world, the youth zone, the earlier the better. That's all I have to add.
Thank you. Councillor Norcombe Whitehead, please.
Yes, not much to add, but I mean, I think the recommendations are reasonable. I would support Councillor Willett's suggestion that we bring that date forward, but not much to add beyond that.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a great idea. I think the idea of having a youth zone is fantastic. I don't see why we can't use the Debden's building. It's an empty building. It's in the centre of town. Everybody can come in by bus, by train, or whatever. I see it's so handy. Is it not possible we could use Debden's building?
Thank you, Councillor Loveland. I had that thought as well. I'm not sure if the youth zone would meet the youth zone criteria for outside space that they usually have. But I think we'd all love to see that prospect of reusing a building that is not in use, and commercially you can still have items above it, you can have dwellings above it or whatever. So I'm sure that can be thrown into the mix. Thank you, and we can pass that idea on to onside. I'll move on. Councillor Wood, please.
Yes, I'm in agreement with 2027. I think the sooner the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Willits. We know your view, so I'll move to Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Well, I did 2030 at our meeting, I have to say. But I'm inclined to be persuaded by Councillor Willits. I think a good target is always worth setting. So why not? Let's go for 2027.
Thank you. Well, my view is I wanted to try and develop a youth zone a year ago and use the town deal funding and to have it in 2025 or 2024. So I am eager to see it, like Councillor McCarthy said, it's been an aspiration, it was an aspiration of the last administration to deliver a youth zone. So I do support the aspirations of Councillor Willits. We did have discussion about reality of the programme, reality of finding the money. And I think Councillor Lissamore will remember at scrutiny in the first few months, I was asking her why we couldn't put the money and keep the money in the budget. And you gave us clear answers as to why not there. But an aspiration for 2027 would be supported clearly by this panel. I support that. And I hope, therefore, we can look at budgets and find ways in which to find that money in order to deliver it, or deliver something as we've put in the recommendations that aspires to a youth zone, whether that be on a site that is now available that we haven't looked at before, then we'll look at every opportunity. So I'm happy that the panel have had their say, and if we can edit that recommendation to say 2027, then that would help. Owen.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, that's fine. I shall edit the recommendations accordingly.
Thank you. And Pam, then I'll come to you. If you could just help us with item 5 or bullet point 5 about 1 Colchester, please.
Thank you, Chair. And it's in the capacity as Chair of 1 Colchester that I'll speak this evening, but the timing is pretty spot on because tomorrow morning at 8:30 we have our strategic board meeting of 1 Colchester. We only have 4 a year, so there will be a great opportunity for me under any other business to raise the discussions that we've had this evening. And in terms of the role that 1 Colchester can play going forward, it's probably worth reminding ourselves that 1 Colchester is not a statutory or accountable body and therefore can't deliver anything as such. However, as Councillor Willits says, partnerships are the in thing at the moment. They're very powerful and have created quite a legacy over the last few years. So we can have a big influence in creating an environment in which a youth zone could be delivered. I think one of the things we could do is to engage with Onside, because we have to again remind ourselves that Onside are responsible for the delivery of the youth zone if one should come to Colchester. So we could certainly do that. What I can report back is there is a lot of sympathy on the 1 Colchester Strategic Board for some of the points raised by the subcommittee and a great desire to see it delivered. I think it's regarded as a partial, if not complete, solution to a lot of the challenges that across our partnership we face in Colchester, particularly issues around youth engagement, obviously, and the deterioration in the health and well-being of a lot of young people, particularly post-pandemic. So in summary, I think I know I can take it to them as a prospect to embrace and own. I know that they can have, if they so wish, as a board. It's unlikely that I will be the chair for much longer. But I know the partners well enough to know that they will certainly want to influence a youth zone coming to Colchester positively. However, I would also say that I think it is contingent upon a number of key partners coming forward, and those partners being of a statutory nature that would allow the type of commitment and ownership and engagement that Councillor Willits has talked about. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. That's really helpful. Does that give some confidence, Councillor Willits?
Most certainly, Chairman.
Excellent, thank you. Okay then, so we have those recommendations. We've worked on them as a subgroup and we've had a small edit this evening. Can I therefore agree those recommendations to go to Cabinet tomorrow? Agreed, excellent, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Pam, for that comment this evening. We go to item 14, the work programme 2021-22. Owen, I come to you just to update and approve any further contents changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I've let the arts organisations know that they're booked in for the 22nd of February item and done a bit of preparation so that they know what the panel is likely to want from them. Likewise, we have one Colchester partnership coming to the 15th of March meeting, which is good timing after tonight's conversation, and just one amendment to the work programme. I'm not entirely sure how it got it. Yes, there we go. Sorry, on one edition of this work programme, the Safer Colchester partnership was down still for the 15th of February meeting, but if you have that version, it isn't on there anymore. That will be purely concentrating on the portfolio holder briefing from Councillor Laws and to examine the business cases of the town deal projects. But no, I have nothing further to add to that report. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Therefore, can we agree that work programme?
Chairman, can I just point out that the agenda I've got hasn't actually got the 15th of April on it at all, but that's of any interest.
15th of Feb was a date we're talking about.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I think it said April. Okay, no, sorry, my mistake. Going deaf.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Willetts, please.
Chairman, on the 15th of February, we have the business cases for town deal projects. Is that all the business cases? Because I thought at an earlier presentation, we were told that they would be done in batches and coming to us as and when the draft of those cases had been prepared for examination by the panel.
I think your memory is correct. They did say that, but I believe actually now we haven't seen any that have come forward earlier, and instead we expect to see all of them on that date. So it's something that Richard Block had been very much involved with, and we would have asked him, but unfortunately he's got COVID and can't be here this evening. Pam, I don't know if you can report, or Dan Gascoigne, but I'll go to you, Pam, if you can then, please.
So on the 15th of February, Councillor Willetts, you will have EMT bringing forward the high-level summaries of the business cases. I think it's even more important than usual in this case that the papers will be prepared and circulated well in advance, and will achieve two things. First of all, to give those of you who are satisfied with a high-level view of all the business cases just that, but also access to councillors, of course, to all of the detailed, and they are very detailed and very long in some cases. But I know you might want to see that, all the detailed business cases. And there will, of course, always be opportunities for challenge before or after the meeting. But yes, you are quite right. They will all come together in two forms on the 15th of February.
Chairman, if I might have final remark on that, I just have concerns about the time that's available, because we're talking about £18.5 million worth of projects. Some of the projects are quite complex, and as has been indicated, there will be a significant amount of examination required, unless the suggestion is that we just look at the high-level summaries and no more than that. But if we're going to delve into them, I would have thought that there would have been a substantial amount of time required to do them justice.
Pam, back to you.
I think we do need to prepare ourselves for quite a long meeting, and I know that councillors are prepared to spend that time in order to get the necessary oversight that you need at scrutiny. But yes, I think by definition, the amount of detail that's in there and the impact, both short, medium, long term, on the future of Colchester is so significant that it will be a long, detailed and challenging meeting. However, I can give you some reassurance in terms of some of the scrutiny that's already gone on behind the scenes in terms of making sure that the business cases that come to you are in excellent order. And I heard that only today, and I have such confidence in the team that are leading the town deal work that I believe that to be true. So I do hope you won't find anything of great concern there, because at the same time, you have to have all the time you need to achieve the adequate level of scrutiny. You know, so I probably don't need to say it, but I'll say it for the record, that we've been under a lot of pressure in terms of timeframes to make sure that we achieve the government's timescale. and the amount of evidence that's had to be gathered and the consultation has been significant. But I do hope when you see them, you'll be assured that the quality is of the highest standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And Dennis, I do agree and do share your concern. But that's why we've gone for the lightest agenda on that date, so we can really focus on that item. I suggest we bring blankets and sleeping bags. That's only because it's so damn cold in here, but we may be here a while. But it's important. You're absolutely right. It's a big slug of money. And we started off scrutinising that early in the year, how the governance had gone and how it will be going, and that we wanted to see these back. So I'm glad we are getting them back in good time, and we will take our time on the evening of the 15th. Okay, thank you. Apart from that, can we agree the work programme going forward? Excellent, thank you. And that concludes the main items on the agenda. We do have a confidential item, so I'll ask if we can stop the recordings and just look at the confidential parts of the financial papers.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, my colleague Richard, he's stopping the YouTube live feed